Welcome back to Parsnips and Parsimony and to my backyard here. This is a June, I don't even know what the date is, middle of June. A garden tour and yard tour of how things are looking in my garden. I have not done one this year. If you want to see my past videos that I've done in past years, I've got a whole playlist of them and you can check those out. But this is the first one for this season and I'm really excited to show you how everything's growing. So right by the house here, this always had blueberries in it and slowly the plants have died. And so I only have one blueberry bush which did not flower this year, just trying to really focus on nourishing it. And then I have some herbs, oregano and some chives. They've seen better days. Part of it is I waited a little too late to clean this bed out, so it got some use and abuse from being raked out. But I have some mystery, I believe it's echinacea. A friend gave it to me, so I'm not sure what color it is, but that's growing pretty well. Had some volunteer 4 o'clock plants here, and then I put zinnias, and all along the back, every year I grow canna lilies for the hummingbirds. Those are just starting to come up. And then I also have a yarrow plant here. This is the second season, so I've never seen it bloom. I'm not sure if it's yellow or another color, but hopefully this year will be the year for that. And then back here, I grew some asters from seed earlier this year with some cosmos, zinnias, and then some coleus here. And then this is another wild blueberry, which I don't think it had flowers on it, but I haven't seen any fruit actually developing on it. We had a really weird spring this year, so I don't think we're gonna get many blueberries. So this year I decided to simplify my gardening and keep it primarily to just my yard. In past seasons, I've had 3 other gardens that I'm actively keeping up, so that'd be a total of 5 good-sized gardens. But this year we just needed to slow that down a little bit and just really focus on the gardens that I have in this year. Up by my house is my primary garden. This one receives the most sun, so this is where I usually grow all of my tomatoes and peppers and those type of plants. It's been a rough year with the rodents, and pests really had to fight them off. They ate a whole bunch of the tomato plants and they are smaller because of that. You can see like this one, they actually nipped right off here, and I didn't think the plant was gonna make it, but it did come out with some side shoots here, so it's coming. I've also decided to add some containers within the garden, focusing on some more flowers, hopefully drawing in some beneficial insects and also making it look pretty. So this is an aster here, and I have 2 rows of tomatoes. So all of these tomatoes are indeterminate, and then these middle rows here are determinate. And determinate just means they're going to get to a certain height and then they're going to stop growing, and indeterminate means they will grow and grow and grow until they either die by frost or by blight. I found last year that when I put the cabbage over in this shady spot, now this gets sun all morning and then the shade comes in, the cabbage actually did very well back here. It grew big, and so look, something got in there and ate that cabbage. Like I said, rodents have been a real problem this year. And this seems to be the perfect condition for growing pretty nice cabbage. So since this gets a little bit too much shade for tomatoes and peppers, I'm using this area for the cabbage and the broccoli. Still have one open bed here. I'm not sure what I'm gonna put in here. I don't really have any more cabbage, so not sure. Maybe some lettuce because of the afternoon shade. I have peppers, all sorts of peppers in here. Again, we have been having real bad problems with rabbits and such, and they've just devastated these plants. You can see all the munchie marks on them. And then I have some zinnias, some more coleus. Over here I have some dahlias in those pots mixed with some coleus. And then the onions have grown really well here. But again, I'm having problems with the rodents, so I'm not sure how many onions I'm going to get. But the celery seems to be surviving the rabbit. They munched it all down, and then they've been leaving it alone. So hopefully they'll behave themselves. And then over here this year I put some cucumbers in. They have not germinated yet. We just put those in recently. So hopefully pretty soon. And I hear Mrs. Wren. She's having a fit. Oh, there she is. You can go in, Mrs. Wren. It's okay. We won't bother you. No, we have a little Mama Wren who has a family right in that box. She's thinking about coming in. It's all right. I won't go anywhere. I absolutely love having the bird box here with the wrens. We've had house sparrows, and with the bird bath right here, it seems to be really attractive to them to come into the garden, which is good for eating all those pests. Speaking of pests, this year my rose bush actually survived all of the pests that they've had. Now I've been picking off the rose sawflies and things like that. I'm not sure. It's been a couple days since I've been out here. You can see the damage that they cause, but I've just been coming out and hand picking them. I don't usually spray this with anything. If it gets really bad, I may make my own horticulture soap to spray on it, but usually that's just like Dawn dish detergent and some soaps and things like that. So this year I put in some more asters. You can see those guys right here, and then I have a dahlia here, having the worst time once again with the rodents. So usually I have a huge pile of echinacea right here, and the rodents have come in and eaten them all down. Look at all the things they've eaten down here. So it's just starting to come back. These are volunteers from seed. I'm glad I didn't pull them out. So we're gonna have some echinacea this year, but it's not gonna be as great as other years. Again, we've got more seeds coming right here. I think that's gonna be really pretty though. I have some cosmos over here. This is some bee balm. If you've never grown bee balm, put it in a pot unless you want it to spread really bad. I just had a broken clay pot and I sunk that right down. It's got a lot of dirt in it. It was a big clay pot, and they have been really happy in it, and now they don't spread into my vegetable garden. As I mentioned earlier, we had a really weird spring. So we had it was an early spring, but we had one really weird frost. So part of the hydrangea buds actually got zapped off by the frost. So this side, which is more unprotected, got hit harder. So you can see it's not really flowering that much. There's flowers coming, but not a ton. I did put in this year zinnias, and there's again asters and dahlias in there. Never grown them here before, so I'm not sure how they'll do, but they look like they're thriving. Just starting to get some buds here. And then I also took out the mums here. It didn't do well last winter, so I just put in some butterfly weed, and it's coming along. Oh, thank you, John. Those are really pretty.
That one was growing right by the door.
I'll take it. I'll go put it in some water. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Honestly, the hostas have outdone themselves this year. I'm not sure if we're going to end up trimming those back or not because they're getting so wide, or if we're just going to slowly pull out the flowers and just have this mostly hostas. I'm not sure. You know, this is on the north side of the house, and you can see how much further along the hydrangeas are there. And I finally got my lilies to grow. These things got trampled on when we redid our front porch years ago, and every year they just wouldn't flower and they would get stepped on by the kids, and I thought they were going to be goners, but they actually have flowers this year. This year I tried planting a couple different plants up here, including some pole beans. The rabbit, these started out in the greenhouse, and I had rodents get in and eat some of those. So this had a ton of plants in it, and I'm down to 2. But this was my newest addition to the garden, and this is a self-watering planter, and it tells me when I need to water it, and then I just fill up the base. So right now in June, it's taking about 2 gallons of water every week. I water it, and then I don't really have to worry about it. And it seems like it's doing really well. Something new to me, but I was just looking for ways to try these for recommendations for older folks that might not be able to actually garden. So far I'm pretty happy with this. I ended up getting this from Veggie Garden, and I'll put a link for that down below if you're interested in it. This is indeterminate cherry 100, I believe, tomato. So this is my only cherry tomato plant, but I figured right off the front porch here, perfect for harvesting tomatoes for salads. This year I wanted to try my hand at growing and starting flowers from seed, and so these petunias are ones that I saw in the catalog. I thought they were really pretty. They actually were really easy to grow from seed, and I think they were called Purple Wave, if I remember correctly. They have done fabulously on the deck boxes, and this is only the middle of June, and I suspect they're going to keep flowering all summer. The coleus I also started from seed. That was not that hard. I had ordered some beautiful black and purple, like a black magic type coleus, but those seeds, I think they were duds because I planted these at the same time, and all these came up, and I got about 100 of them, and then the other coleus didn't come up. These they haven't done a whole lot. I don't remember the name of them. They're kind of more of a filler, and they're growing a little bit on the slower side. These haven't flowered yet. This is geranium, and this is supposed to be more of a silver color, but again, it hasn't flowered yet, so I'm not sure how that one's gonna turn out. And pretty much every box is all the same all the way around, but I think this coleus is so pretty with the hot pink. It was an assorted variety, and I'm really liking that color. We do have some peaches, as you can see right there. We have some peaches on our peach tree. Again, we have a family of red squirrels that are trying to make it their mission to eat all of the peaches. I'm not sure if they're going to be successful or not. And the grape arbor, the cherry tree, and the other peach tree are all doing fairly well, considering we have a lot of wildlife back here. I'm trying to keep this focused mostly on herbs and vegetables. I started some lavender once again this year from scratch. Have had the worst success getting lavender to stay here and to grow well. So one of you guys sent me this sign, and it's so perfect for this poor little plant. Last year I had zinnias and cosmos here, and this poor sage plant got smothered by the zinnias. So I ended up tipping this up and putting it in a tomato cage with hopes that maybe it will start to really show some growth here, and then I can just trim this back so it's more bushy. So hopefully, learning from my mistakes, I've only put in a couple zinnias this year. They are the tall ones, but once these daffodil tops are done, I'm just going to take those bungee cords and we'll bungee those zinnias up against the chicken coop. It'll provide shade for the chickens, but also will hopefully prevent them from falling on top of the herbs here. This poor lupine, an animal came through and ate it, and this is literally all I have left of it. I don't know if it'll come back or not. I can hope. The oregano is doing very well. I snag a bite every time I go by, and it just looks really happy. And then we had some volunteer marigolds right here, and then one of my coleus. The clematis survived and actually started climbing up the chicken coop a lot further this year, and that again provides some shade for the chickens. You can see they're right there in the shade enjoying it. Here we are, August 10th, and everything has grown like weeds. This year we decided to add another raised bed to our raised bed family, And we have been so impressed with how these raised beds grow food. I mean, they're just absolutely fabulous. So I've already had spinach and pak choi here. We just pulled that out, and I went ahead and planted some more carrots and beets over here. I'm letting that kale here go to seed, and then I will harvest those seeds and pull that out, and that is that other kale plant here. And then I have a whole ton of beet greens. It just amazes me how well this garden does in a raised bed. I do have some onions that I put in here. My only complaint with this bed, and this is a soil thing, not the bed, is it does not hold a lot of the moisture. So it does dry out a little bit faster than normal, and once this gets established, particularly over here, I'm going to be putting in some grass clippings to help retain that moisture. For 4-H, the kids planted tomatoes, except in Daniel's plant, he got a pepper. So this is Daniel's mystery pepper. We're not sure what it'll be, but he's taking care of that one. And then for 4-H, when they did all their tomatoes, they planted this whole bed full of tomatoes. So this will be fun for the kids to watch. This is primarily their responsibility. We brought in all the grass clippings to help with weeding. And then also part of their projects were making stones that they could mark whose tomatoes were whose. And they are making marglobes and beefsteak tomatoes. Both are determinants in this bed this year, and we're going to see how they actually do. Hurricane Debbie just went through. The tomatoes have been knocked over, and our new veggie garden bed unfortunately has blossom end rot, so we're not going to get as many tomatoes as we would have liked, but that's just a soil amendment thing, so we'll work on that next year. And the weeds have grown like crazy. There are actually peaches in there, and there looks like there's one cherry right there. Birds haven't gotten it. I probably should pick it and put it inside. Earlier this year, the boys helped me get the entire garden re-fenced in because it had broken down just from age and use. Art redid the door, and so now it is pretty much rabbit proof. Yeah, I still have voles, moles, and mice, but at least the big rabbits are out. And then this I added to my garden last fall, and it is, I've been just throwing my compost in there. This one has more grass clippings, and this one was almost completely decomposed, and then we added more stuff to it. So when I weed, what I don't give to the chickens, I just put in here, and I just rotate that periodically, and we're going to see how that works. See if this is a mommy style composter, and see if I like that versus how I usually do my compost. This is our usual compost setup. We have our fresh compost, and then as it gets rotated, it becomes more and more decomposed until we hit the final pile, and that is ready to use in all of the gardens. So on this side, I am doing cucumbers this year. Again, having the worst time with rodents. Got a couple cukes coming in. I replanted earlier this week, so hopefully they'll come in. And the same thing for all my celery. Boy, I tell ya, those rodents are just coming in and trying to eat everything. Looks like they may have eaten a couple plants right there. I think there was 48 plants in here, and I'll tell you, there's not 48 plants there anymore. And then back here, this is more cabbage. This is earlier cabbage, and you can see it's actually bigger. And this was volunteer lettuce that wintered over from last fall when it actually seeded and started to germinate, and so I just transplanted it amongst the cabbage. Obviously it's getting near the end, but these row covers, the fabric has held up. This is my third season using this, and I also purchased these hoops with my gardening so much. I don't know about you, but I get so discouraged when I work really hard in the garden and then something comes through and eats it all. They can eat anything they want out in the yard. They don't need to come in my garden. So by buying this netting, even though my fence is secure, this seems to be preventing it's almost like a double layer, and it also prevents the insects. So all of the Brachysa plants that usually get the cabbage worms, this keeps those away, and that makes it much more pleasant when I'm harvesting. So it's a win-win. I've used a couple different kinds, all been very happy with it. I have them in my Amazon store if you just want to see what I'm using, or if you need some ideas. They have different widths, and I've made the mistake of buying too short and not too short or not wide enough. My recommendation is, if you're going to buy this, make sure you measure your space before you buy it, and buy bigger because your plants are going to grow. So here you can see the cabbage is just about ready to get is starting to hit the top of this netting, and so these poles here are completely expandable, and I can extend this and make it taller for the plants so I can keep that netting on. But if you buy just the size that you think in the beginning, you're not leaving room for growing, and then you can't have your covering all season. And here I've got some Brussels sprouts. I have never tried Brussels sprouts in this section of the garden, so I'm not sure how they're gonna do. We've been fighting some slugs here. I do have some slug repellent that works really well, but if you guys have just a can of beer, or an old can of beer, does beer ever go bad? Pour it into a tuna fish can and then just leave it in the soil, and the slugs at night will come and they will flock to that can of beer, and then they will have a party and you won't have to worry about them. I'll need to do this. There's, like I said, there's something called slug magic, and that is, I believe, a organic product, and you just sprinkle that around and the slugs eat it, and then it takes care of them. Back here I put some cosmos because it attracts a lot of beneficial insects to the garden, so I wanted some flowers back here. And then here, let's see if they're coming up. There they are. I have some carrots coming along. It is so dry here right now though. And carrots, beets, and I don't remember what I put in this row. Maybe more carrots? The garlic is ready to pull all of those scape heads off, and if you've never seen garlic scapes, these are the seed pods for the garlic. You need to pull these off so you can have bigger heads on the garlic. I need to go through and harvest all those. But over here I have more beets, and I had tons of beets, and then a vole came through and ate them all. So again, this is like the story of my year. We do have carrots all along here, and then over here I have some late lettuce mix that seems to be doing pretty well here. The peas, we're actually going to get peas this year. Really had to fight the rabbit for these guys, but they're coming along. I finally have flowers, and we'll get some peas. Oh, hello, Mr. Volunteer Tomato. I didn't know you were here. How did you get there? And here I had a whole patch of zucchini and a whole patch of squash. And if you can't tell, it's all gone. Yes, thanks to my friendly neighborhood vole, mole, and mouse. So, trying to trap those out of here and going to replant and hopefully have better success with that, because that's pretty depressing. Usually I have some squash almost ready to harvest by now, and I literally have nothing to show for it. I did put some pretty zinnias in here, and then I have another aster, zinnia, and my very first ever dahlia. The squash is outdoing itself. This is yellow squash, and there may be one zucchini plant. If you guys remember, had a really hard time getting these to grow because an animal kept pulling them out, but we finally were able to tackle that, and we have a lot of squash coming. All right, we have a funny story here. If you'll notice, we have potatoes here, and I put these in late, but if you look, this potato has more of a purplish bluish tint to it, and that's because this is a purple potato plant. So back in 2020, when this was all potatoes and I was trying to be really self-sufficient and grow all my own food, I had my potato patch here, and I thought I got all the potatoes out. And every single year I harvest this silly potato plant, and every single year it comes up. So I must have planted one potato really deep, and that's why it keeps coming up. But whatever, that was a very good value for our money. Now, if you look down here, oh, there's that vole hole. You guys see that? That is a potato. A purple potato. Got one there, and another mouse and rodent hole. So annoying, these rodents this year. I have pole beans. Again, been having a lot of problems with them, with the rodents, but we've got pole beans now, and I think they're big enough that they're going to survive and move up those teepees. I have a whole video on how I made these if you're interested in seeing a little bit more on how I do this. But these teepees have worked so well for me for so many years, and pole beans are so much more productive. The beans are doing phenomenal and are huge as always. And then over here, we're in the process of putting in some fall cabbage that hasn't gotten planted yet, but we have watermelon that we put in a little on the late side, but it's doing really well here. And then some kale and Brussels sprouts, some more pumpkins, and then cabbage over here, which is doing quite well. And there is celery in here, but the cucumbers have decided to overtake it. The cucumbers are coming towards the end of their season. To give you an idea how tall these beans are, I'm a little over 5 feet tall, and they're probably another 1.5 feet, 2 feet over me. So pole beans for the win. So I learned something, that horseradish over here does better than horseradish that was over in that end of the garden, and I've actually lost almost all of it. So sort of a change of plans. I'm ending up, this horseradish is volunteer. Used to have all my horseradish over here before I built the greenhouse, and then that didn't, you know, the horseradish just kind of volunteered and kept coming up. If you guys know about horseradish, that's what horseradish does. But it's thriving. So this year I'm going to just leave it here. Probably in the fall I'll push it back a little bit so it's not all the way up here. But I have some cosmos, some chives right back there, and then my hyssop that I started from seed. Last year it actually overwintered in the pots. A neighbor told me how to just put these in the woods or in a protected area, and they will come up in the fall. So I did that, and they came out really well. Same thing with my thyme here. That I overwintered, and it came back beautifully in the pot. Now around the rear of the garden, Collins, my son-in-law's grandpa, made this birdhouse for me. And so we put it up last midsummer, and we didn't get anything in it. But this year we've had a family of sparrows so far, and now we currently have a wren nest in here. Our owl box back there has not had owls in it ever since that one that we did a video on. We'd love to get some. Then back here, got our extra fencing. The asparagus is doing really well, except it has, I don't know if you guys can see these little worms. There they are. And I am not sure what they are. Apparently asparagus gets something like this, and they stripped these plants completely. Some of it's okay. I have to weed in here. So I'm not sure if I should cut these down or what. Still working on that. And finally, we have grapes. After 10 plantings of grapes, we actually have grapes. And yes, I have to weed. These are both green grapes, table grapes, so they're seedless. And so far, we have growth. We have that one here, and then this one over here, and they look like they're gonna make it. And I don't know if you can see it, but we have grapes, grapevine. One there, and one there, it finally made it. There's just a little peek of what the back garden looks like right now. We're in the process of putting in some fall cabbage. That hasn't gotten planted yet, but we have watermelon that we put in a little on the late side, but it's doing really well here. And then some kale and Brussels sprouts, some more pumpkins, and then cabbage over here, which is doing quite well. And there is celery in here, but the cucumbers have decided to overtake it. The cucumbers are coming towards the end of their season. This year, Art and I really wanted to just put a priority on slowing down, especially since we finished our rental property. We wanted to put some real time and effort into our own home and our gardens and just try to get back to the things that need to be done here. So you can see there's been a lot of changes in the garden over the past 2 months, and most of them positive. We're starting the process of canning and preserving all of this food for the winter months. But I hope this has inspired you to keep gardening. We're in zone 5, so we're coming to the end of our fall planting for fall crops and starting to get ready for the winter. Thanks so much for coming along. I hope you're having a fabulous day, and we'll see you for your next video.